The questions that we ask, the questions that we ask really determine our experience of reality. You can have two people who are living their lives, and really the difference in their experience is going to come down to the questions that they are asking. The questions that they're asking. We live our lives based on a framework of the questions that we are asking. And the questions that we choose to ask in our lives are also the answers. You know, when we ask the question, the answers are implied in the question that we're asking. So really our questions, the nature of the questions, the type of questions that we ask really ends up determining our experience in our lives, our experience in reality. And as mystics, each one of us, the nature of our questions, if we define ourselves as being mystics, our questions are about the nature of reality itself. It's not just questions about what is in reality, it's questions about what is reality. Here in Sunday Mystery School, we are currently exploring the teachings of Neville Goddard, in particular his 1948 Masterclass. And at the end of his Masterclass, he took the time to hold a question and answer session with the students who had attended his 5-day Mystery School Masterclass. And the questions that are asked by these students and explored in detail and transcribed for the benefit, we can have the benefit of exploring these together. These questions are so revealing about the state of these students who sat through this 5-day masterclass in mysticism, which is really a masterclass in that question, what is reality? The masterclass really exists to help to answer that question. Now, of course, that question, what is reality? That's a question that fosters additional questions, right? It's not a question with a singular answer. It's a question that really evokes a sense of exploring a mystery. And of course, that's why we call this exploration Mystery School, because when we begin to ask questions about the very nature of reality, and we start to realize that there isn't a singular answer, but rather this is a mystery that we are now on a journey of exploration. We're on a journey of discovery. We're discovering what is the nature of reality. And as we position ourselves to undertake this exploration, to travel on this journey of discovery about what is the nature of reality from the perspective of being a mystic, the questions that we ask are very much going to translate to the experiences that we have. And this is why I really, really appreciate this Q&A session from Neville. The questions that are asked by his students are not, questions from people who really have no perspective on this master question of what is reality. These are questions from people who have sat through the training. They've taken the course and they've had the opportunity to really sit and stew on this wisdom. They've been sitting in a circle for 5 days, really deeply going into these metaphysical explorations guided by Neville of what is the nature of reality and who am I, the I that I am, who is that? And, how is reality shaped and created from my concept of myself? Masterclass training in that, and then here come the questions. And I love the questions because they really illustrate the state of the students and also begin to bridge this gap between the theoretical framework that is the exploration of that master question, what even is reality, and the practical application. Because yes, we're asking the question of what is reality, and we're also experiencing reality. So the marriage of those ideas, the question of what is it that I'm experiencing and I'm also experiencing, and then beginning to answer through an exploration. It's not a singular answer, like answer through a mystery school exploration. What is reality? And then translate that to, okay, how do I apply this to my life? How do I use this to shape and mold my daily experience? And that's where we find ourselves in this Neville Q&A. We find ourselves, really, sitting in 70 years later and listening to these students in this state asking these questions, understanding through this exploration a little bit more about what reality is, and then really asking these questions of how to apply this metaphysical wisdom to their everyday lives. So we're going to continue. This is actually part 2. So in the last episode of Sunday Mystery School, we covered the first couple of questions from this Q&A, and there are many, as you can imagine. After 5 days of a mystery school teaching, sitting in the same room with Neville, I think we would all have questions. So we're going to go ahead and continue with these exploration of these questions. And I also wanted to remind you all that when we get to the end of the Neville Q&A, we're going to do our own Sunday Mystery School Q&A. So as we're talking about these things, or as you're reviewing lessons or thinking about these ideas, record your questions, anything that comes to mind that you feel you would gain the benefit of having a discussion about in a forum like this. Record those questions, and I will be providing a way for you to send those in so that we can have a dedicated episode of Sunday Mystery School just to our questions, and can discuss them and really gain some additional insight into this mystery that is the nature of reality. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue with the Neville text here. And we're starting, this is our second session here. So we're starting a couple of questions in, and I'm just going to pick up where we left off from last time. So in the last episode, we ended with the question, how do I imagine larger audiences for my talks? And Neville was talking about how you literally create your audience in your mind's eye, in the eye of your imagination, and then you speak to them. And the key phrase here was, he told the story of a friend of his who, rented a room, and there was like maybe 15 people, but in his mind's eye, he had filled it with thousands. And so he's like, hey, can you hear me in the back? Even though there's like 10 people and they're all sitting up front. Hey, can you hear me back there? Right? Because in his mind's eye, he was speaking, to the audience, and how this idea can really be condensed to the sensation of people are hungry for what I have to offer. There's a demand, there's a hunger for my gifts, skills, talents, and abilities that I have to offer to the world. There is a demand for what I have to offer. That's how you can condense that feeling. So you can stand before your large audience in your mind and address them in your imagination and feel, that you are meeting a strong and hungry need and desire for whatever it is that you have to offer. Okay, so picking up with the next question, and this is a common one. I get this one, being on YouTube and having people comment on my videos. This one comes up a lot. So this is a very common question, and the question is worded as like this. The question is it possible to imagine several things at the same time, or should I confine my imagining to one desire? Is it possible to imagine all of my desires at once, or should I really focus on one thing at a time? I get this question all very frequently. And the whole idea is, it's like, well, I have more than one desire, but whenever I listen to Neville talk about how to create desires, he's always giving the example of going into imagination and arranging a series of sensory impressions that imply that I have achieved that objective, that desire. So, in my timeline, if that event that I desire to occur has already occurred, let me hop over it in my imagination and then create a scene with sensory inputs, sensory vividness that would very normally and naturally follow this event taking place. Okay, so then the question is, well, but there's more things that I want to desire than what would happen in a single event. So how do I imagine more than one thing at a time? Or should I just do as I've been taught by Neville and move from scene to scene to scene, and over time create scenes for each of my desires individually? This is what Neville says. And this answer is kind of funny because he kind of says it both ways. He says, personally, I like to confine my imaginal act to a single thought, but that does not mean I will stop there. During the course of the day, I may imagine many things, but instead of imagining lots of small things, I would suggest that you imagine something so big it includes all the small things. Instead of imagining wealth, health, and friends, imagine being ecstatic. You could not be in ecstasy, you could not be feeling ecstatic and also be in pain. You could not be feeling a sensation of ecstasy and be threatened with a dispossession notice, which is like an eviction notice. You could not be feeling ecstasy if you were not enjoying a full measure of friendship and love. What would the feeling be like were you ecstatic? Without knowing what had happened on the outside to produce your feeling of ecstasy. If you were just feeling ecstatic, but you didn't know that there was an event that it was connected to, if you kind of left that nebulous and you just assumed the feeling of this is just how I feel, what would that feel like? So Neville goes on to say, reduce this idea of ecstasy to a single sensation. Isn't it wonderful? Do not allow the conscious reasoning mind to ask, why? Why am I feeling this way? What was it that caused me, to feel, what's wonderful? What happened that's wonderful? Don't allow your reasoning, logical mind to go down that direction, because that is going to leak the energy of the sensation, because now you're going into logic and reasoning. And Neville says if you do that, the sensation would be lost. Rather, repeat over and over again, isn't it wonderful? And suspend judgment as to what is wonderful. Rather, just focus on, isn't it wonderful? And catch that one sensation of wonder, right? It's built into the word, wonderful, full of wonder, full of wonder. Catch that sensation of the wonder of it all. And things will happen to bear witness to the truth of this sensation. And I promise you, it will include all the little things. Okay, so we defined for ourselves what is a small thing to imagine and what is a big thing to imagine. Okay, so in my personal experience, I do a mixture of all of this. As Neville is saying, during the course of a day, I imagine many things, but also focus on one master state. Now, we've talked about what that one master state or that one master feeling is. Neville is describing it as a feeling of wonderment, illustrated by the phrase, isn't it wonderful? We've also talked about in Neville and Chill episode, we talked about this feeling of, I have arrived. I have arrived. Okay, so in that sentence, in that phrase, I have arrived, there's this insinuation that I am more. The I that I am is more than just the physical aspect of me. When I have arrived, when I am arriving and I have arrived, I am bringing with me all that I am, all that I am. And that's why it's a master feeling, because now it's not just, hey, Josiah's here. It's I have arrived. I have arrived. I have arrived in my life. I have arrived in this moment. I have arrived in this circumstance. I have arrived in this place. I've arrived in this event. I am here. And so bringing all of that, there is no lack. There is no limitation. There is no want. There is no feeling of separation when I have arrived. All that I am here, how could I want for anything? I am all that could possibly be. And when I summon that feeling of all that I am, all that I am in my royal identity, I have arrived. That feeling implies all of the so-called small things. How could I want for anything when I have arrived? How could I be anything less than happy and successful and fulfilled and healthy and wealthy and full of love when I have arrived? Okay, so you're hearing in this moment, you're hearing my voice saying these words, but there's a feeling here. There's a feeling of I have arrived. And we talk about this, we talk about how shifting states is a process of catching the mood. Okay, so you catch the mood like you make a cup of tea. Okay, so you heat up the water for a cup of tea, and then you put the tea bag in, and then the water works with the herbs in the tea, and over time that tea gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Okay, because over time the water, when you if you're to put it in a clear glass and you're going to watch that tea bag go into this clear hot water vessel, okay, you're going to see just those little tendrils of herbs entering the water. And then 5-7 minutes later, that water is going to be a deep, rich color of the tea. Okay, so the water is catching the tea. Okay, so we catch a mood like the water brews in tea. Okay, so we sit in the silence and we create our hot water. Okay, so that's bringing, it's kind of a strange analogy, but for some reason I feel like it's working. So let's roll with it. So that's bringing all of our attention inward and really getting like pulling our awareness back into our beingness, withdrawing from the external world into our beingness. That's heating up the water. Okay, and then dropping that tea in, which is this, what would the feeling be like if I have arrived? Okay, so then you get this little hint, which is akin to looking at it and seeing those little tendrils of the tea starting to brew. You get that little hint, okay, but you don't immediately pull the tea bag out. You let it brew, you let it soak, right? You let it soak. So you begin to soak yourself. You begin to soak yourself, meaning your awareness, in this feeling of I have arrived. You're kind of teasing at it at first because you're brewing, right? So it's like you're kind of getting in alignment with, you're kind of tuning into it. And as you tune into it, it's going to get clearer and clearer of a feeling. And then once you really feel it, then you really pull it into your state. Okay, to really, turn that water a deep, rich color of that tea. So the water is your awareness. You're going to really turn your awareness, that deep, rich color of this idea that you're contemplating, this mood that you're catching. Okay. So I'm really focused on this I in my royal state have arrived. And I feel that that encompasses, isn't it wonderful? Of course, it's wonderful that I in my royal state have arrived. Of course, I feel ecstatic that I have arrived. I mean, this is the universe becoming aware of itself in a local human being body. Okay, that is the feeling of ecstasy. So this I have arrived feeling really encompasses all of the other feelings. But don't just take my word for it. You have to brew the tea. You have to sit in the silence and really beckon that feeling to come close, right? Come close, my son, that I may feel you. You know, like Isaac speaking to Jacob, like, come here and let me like really get to know you. Let me really get to know this feeling. Let me really get to align and begin to catch this mood and brew it in my awareness. Okay. So it's like, there's by brewing it. So it's like, okay, there's a physical sensation in my body. When I have arrived, all of a sudden, you know, my spine gets a little bit straighter, right? My chest opens up a little bit because now my heart is beginning to open because I'm really feeling a connection to all things. I'm feeling oneness with all things. Okay. So I'm opening, I'm becoming more relaxed and becoming more present. Okay. I may feel the energy, you know, begin to light up my crown chakra because that's really my connection to source. All that is my crown chakra and my human energy template, crown chakra, heart opening, really feeling present. Okay. I might feel, you know, a sense of, you know, my energy body really brightening, right? There's an energetic association or sensation of that with this I have arrived. And then I may notice that my mental environment begins to shift. Maybe I start to feel in my mind lighter, wholer, freer. And I begin to catch this mood. And so this can take place over a number of minutes. And what I found, and I think this is probably true for everyone, once you really catch this mood, there's really no other feeling like it. And so it becomes something that we have a desire to consistently return to until it becomes our home. Till it becomes our home. Okay. So we've talked about in Sunday Mystery School this idea of, you know, you can create all these mansions. Okay. But if you only sleep there one night, okay, you were just a renter. You didn't actually move in. You did not change your address. Okay. So you can catch this mood. You can, you know, brew this tea. But if you only stay there one night, you were just renting. I have arrived. Okay. You were just renting that as a feeling. Or isn't it wonderful? You were just renting that as a feeling. Okay. You checked in, you checked out, you paid the cleaning fee, and now you're on your way. Okay. But that's not what we're told to do. We're told to choose the house that we will move into. Okay. And we are told to go and prepare the place that where I am, there you may also be. Okay. So we go there and then we bring our whole self with us. And then we're moving in. And that becomes our new default state. That becomes our most normal, natural residence. Right? Now it becomes the address that's on our driver's license. Okay. And metaphorically speaking, right? Like is this your correct address, sir? Yes. This is where I live. Is it the feeling of I have arrived? Yes, that's the one. That's where I live. That's just my state now. I am the one who has arrived. Okay. Or I am the one who is in the state of, isn't it wonderful? I am the one who is in the state of, I feel ecstatic because my life is full. Okay. So there's this idea kind of tying the whole thing together here. So there's this idea of we move into the state and then we understand that the mirror reflects our face. Okay. So when we're in the state, that's how we look. And then we look out at the world, which is the external world is a mirror of our state. So we look out at the world and now we're seeing our face reflected back to us. Okay. So if we're in the state of I have arrived, now the story that we experience on the stage that is the world is going to reflect back to us what is life like when we have arrived. That's now the story being told on the stage. So when I have arrived, this is now what life is like. Okay, so now, all the characters on the stage play of my life come and help me experience through the dramas, the little moments that play out, help me experience what life is like, filtered through the state of I have arrived, or isn't it wonderful, or I feel ecstatic. Okay, so tying it all together, this, when you're asking, can I imagine everything at once, or do I have to go scene by scene? It's both, right? So it's, you can imagine everything at once if you can get into that feeling of I have arrived. Okay, because I have arrived implies everything, right? Everything. Okay, and you can also imagine scene by scene. Okay, and I feel it's important to do both, because really what we're doing is we're exercising in imaginal activity. So it's like, if you're a professional golfer, okay, you go to the gym and you work on the muscles using, weights and resistance training and stretching and all that type of stuff that you're going to use to swing that club and hit the ball. And you also go to the links and you actually hit the ball. Okay, so you do both. Okay, so in this case, I would say imagining the individual events is akin in the analogy to going to the gym and working on those specific muscle groups that you're going to use. Okay, and then going to the links and actually playing rounds of golf is akin to really connecting to that master state, that feeling of I am, what implies that I have everything. Okay. So there is really a place for both, and both are important. Okay, moving on to the next question here. This is question 6. It says, how often should I perform the imaginal act? Should it be a few days? Or should it be several weeks? Okay, so Neville's going to give his answer, but I want to immediately call back to what we were just talking about. If you buy a new house, okay, how often are you going to sleep there? Are you going to sleep there for a few days? Or are you going to sleep there for a long time? Okay. Again, this idea of where do you live? Where are you living? What's your residence? Right. So it's like, and there's more to this, and he's about to get into it, but I just want to immediately point that out. How often should I perform the imaginal act? Well, really, if it's a state, you're moving in. So it's going to become continuously. I'm continuously performing this imaginal act. It's not just an event I'm doing once. It's a place from which I'm living my life. Okay, so there's that aspect. And then also Neville says in the book of Genesis, the story is told of Jacob. Remember Jacob, the smooth-skinned lad? Okay, so Jacob is the imagination. There's a story told of Jacob wrestling with an angel. Okay, so what is an angel? An angel is an idea or a messenger. This story gives us the clue we are looking for. When satisfaction is reached, impotence follows. Okay, so naturally there is there's a metaphor here that we won't go too deeply into, but the whole idea is that when you're performing the procreative act, okay, and there's a point of satisfaction reached, impotence naturally follows. It's like you don't continue procreating after satisfaction is reached because impotence follows. So that's part of the natural order of things. So the Bible, which was written in these very general basic archetypes that anyone in any century or epoch of humanity could understand, because all humans will always understand to some extent the very basic natural idea of procreation. That's where we came from. Okay, so like the Bible was written using metaphors that are archetypical in a way where whether we're talking about it in the year 1000 or the year 50,000, we will understand them. That's the genius of this written word of God, is that it's really encoded in this way. So that's why It's using that as a metaphor. It's like, okay, when satisfaction is reached, impotence follows. So how Neville decodes this, he says, when the feeling of reality is yours. Okay, so the feeling of reality is yours. So when you step into the dream, okay, and it becomes cubic. And if you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. Particularly in the hypnagogic state, if you're really doing state akin to sleep, there's a moment where it's like you step through a portal and now you're in that world where that scene is happening. Okay. That's the feeling of true reality. Remember the tones of reality he's talking about? That's not an abstract thing. I can say this because I've done it. Running an imaginal scene, and then it's like a door opens and I'm stepping into this world where this scene is happening. And now I'm experiencing it. It's not something I'm doing, it's something that's happening. And this is also what Neville means by saying, a minimum of effort. So it's like you start with a little bit of efforting to create the scene. And then there's a moment where this thing happens and you're teleported into the scene and then you're not doing anything. It's just happening. Okay. So that's that feeling of reality. And once you feel that feeling of reality, at least for the moment, you become mentally impotent. And what he means by that is that desire is now satiated. You've experienced it. It was real for you. You've been there. It's no longer, you no longer feel removed or apart from it. Right? So it's like you're now looking back on it instead of looking ahead to it, if that makes sense. You've now placed yourself in a position in 4D to where now it's already happened. So like you're satiated, like, oh yeah, that was already created. I already experienced, it's already done. So it's like I'm now after the event and it's already happened. And I feel complete with that. Okay. So he says the desire to repeat the act of prayer is then lost because it has now been replaced by the feeling of accomplishment. You cannot persist in wanting what you already have. If you assume you are what you desire to be, to the point of ecstasy, becomes so real that it overtakes your entire awareness and you are that. You no longer want it. How could you want it? You don't want what you already have because you have it. That's a satiated desire. I mean, you may want to keep it, but that's a different thing. There's some distinction in the language here. So when you're wanting something that you feel apart from, there's like this tension energy and you're like trying to pull it towards you. But once you have it, that tension energy is gone and you now feel complete and satiated. And you feel one with it. It's a part of me, or like I was saying about jumping ahead of it in the timeline, like now it's in my memory because I was there and I experienced it. Okay. Yes, it was in, the portal state, but still I experienced it. I now know what that's like. There's no longer like this tension of, I wonder what that's like. It's like, oh yeah, no, I've done that. I did that. I am that. Cool. Right. It's like that. The charge leaves it. The charge leaves it. And that's this idea of the impotence. You don't want to continue in the act because the charge that was compelling you to do the act has now dissipated. It's now been satisfied. Okay. So it's like, the two magnets, when they're just a little bit apart, there's this pull, but once they snap together, right? Like that tension, that was between them, now they're together. So that tension has been satisfied in a way. Okay. So Neville is saying your imaginal act is very much a creative act, similar to the physical one. This gets back into the procreation analogy, wherein man halts, shrinks, and is blessed. For as man creates his own likeness, such as in procreation, where you're literally creating a copy of yourself in the physical human sense, so does your imaginal act transform itself into the likeness of your assumption. Okay, so this analogy works both for creation and procreation. Okay, so in the latter example, you're creating a human copy of yourself. And in the former example, you're creating a reality copy of the experience that you're imprinting into your awareness by going through the portal state and experiencing it. Okay, I know we're getting a little abstract here, but hopefully this is clicking for you. And then here's a key point that he brings up. He says, if you do not reach the point of satisfaction, continue to repeat the action over and over again until you feel as though you touched it and virtue went out of you. So it's this ethereal orgasm. It's this ethereal, something has now been implanted. Something went out of me. This, the virtue, who touched me, or I perceive that virtue has gone out of me. That's something that Jesus says. And of course, Jesus is the state of being that we are all in when we're aware of these things. Okay. When we are in that state of I am that I am, we are doing and saying the things in our awareness that Jesus is portrayed as doing and saying the things in the Bible. So Jesus is saying, who touched me, for I feel that virtue went out of me. That's the woman, touching his cloak. Your faith has made you whole, right? That's the end of that. She's like, oh, I touched you. That's the end of that story. And he's like, your faith has made you whole. Okay. So all these ideas weave together, right? So it's like, you touch that state and you feel that the virtue has gone out of you, meaning that you feel that it was real. You made it real. The creative power that you are was expressed. Okay, that's the virtue going out. The creative power that we are was expressed. And now our faith has made us whole. Okay, so because our faith in our creative ability was expressed through this entering of the portal state and experiencing in our imagination what we would experience in our reality, were our wish now a realized fact. Now our faith has made us whole. Now that is now a real thing for us because we have now aligned with it in our consciousness. And again, to hit this key point, you know that you have done it when you no longer desire it. Okay? You can be, going around your city and this, there's this kind of a car person. So I'm going to use that as an analogy. There's this beautiful car, that was just released by this car manufacturer, and everywhere you go, it's catching your eye and you're like, wow, that is a beautiful car. Okay. And so you start to get this desire, like, I kind of want to own one of those. Okay. So you're noticing it. And every time you see it, you're like, yeah, you're like attracted to it. You're like, wow, yeah, that's a nice car. I'm using car as an example, fill in the blank if you're not a car person. Wow, that's, beautiful, whatever. Wow, that's a really, attractive, desirable, whatever it is, fill in the blank. Okay. And then when the bridge of incidents, happens and you go and you buy that car and now it's sitting in your garage and you're out and about in your city and you see that car, the feeling's now different. You're like, yeah, I have one of those. Yeah, that is an awesome car. I know because I own that car. Yeah, now you're like, that person gets it, right? Because that person has good taste because I have good taste and I own that car. That person owns that car. Like, yeah, we're like, we're like car family. Okay. So you get the idea, right? So it's like that feeling changes. You no longer want that car. Like, oh, I kind of want to own that car. No, it's like, oh yeah, I own that car. You're now in the state of ownership. Okay. As opposed to shopping, you now own. Okay, so that's the difference. So you don't want to buy it anymore because now it's in your garage. That's the whole idea here. So now our work is to take these analogies, these words, what Neville is saying, what I am saying, what is ever coming up in your awareness. Now the work is to take all of that and to really translate it to a first person present tense metaphysical experience within each of our own awareness, where we go from wanting to having, from shopping to owning, from renting to residence, from desiring to being. Okay. Next question, question 7. I have been taught not to ask for earthly things. I have been taught to ask only for spiritual growth. But really, money and stuff is what I need. Neville says, you must be honest with yourself. You must be honest with yourself. You must see yourself. All through scripture, the question is asked, what do you want of me? Okay, so who's asking that question? The Father, right? The Father that is source, that is the field of all possible realities, is asking each of us, which are sparks of the individual one divine creator, what do you want of me? The reality field that we're all living in is asking us, what do you want to experience? Some wanted to see. I was blind and now I see. I didn't see and now I do see. I didn't see that car in my garage and now I do see that car in my garage. I didn't see a ring on my finger and now I do see a ring in my finger. I was blind to the state, but now I see. Okay? Some wanted to see. Others wanted to eat, be satiated, be fed. Okay, very, very tangible, physical human desires, satiation of hunger. Still others wanted to be made straight. Now that's a 1948 way of saying broken to whole. Okay, so that could be the physical body, if you're lame or cripple, made whole, made straight. But again, this is 1948, right? So he has different connotations for words than what we do in our modern era. Okay, so others wanted to be made whole or made healthy, healthful, well, made well, or that my child live. Okay, now this is metaphysical and physical. So it could literally be you're a parent and you love your child and your child is struggling with something. And so you're asking all that is, which is your own awareness in the largest possible sense, source itself, which is referred to in the Bible as the Father in each of us. Please heal my child. Please make my child live. Okay. And then metaphysically, that's a physical interpretation. Metaphysically, it could be, the whatever the desire of my heart is, that's my child. Okay. So, that sacred desire of my heart for my life, what I really desire. So maybe I have a sacred dream or a sacred wish to be a certain person, maybe I'm, a singer-songwriter and I desire to, tour the world, singing for the nations. And so now that's like the sacred desire of my heart. And so that's like now my child. And so I want that child to live, meaning I want the offspring of my imagination, which is this state and life really that I want to live. I want that to live. Okay. So I'm asking the Father in me, my own awareness of being in the largest possible sense, to make that sacred offspring of my imagination live. Okay. Neville says your dimensionally larger self speaks to you through the language of desire. So desire, the secret truth about desire is built right into the word. Okay, so day, sire. Okay, so day of, right? So day could be translated as of. And sire, well, we understand that the sire is the father. Okay, so, we go into the animal kingdom, we're looking at horses, and it's like the sire of this, racehorse is a thoroughbred, winner of, purebred, thoroughbred, winner of horse competitions. Okay, so that's the sire. Okay, so that's a father of the offspring horse. Okay, so day of sire, the father. So our desires, when they're true desires, they're of the Father. So what does that mean? It means that this matrix of reality in which we're living, our dimensionally larger self, the Father in us, guides us toward the expression of our possibility through desires. How would I know that I could give life to something, that I could be something, if I didn't have an inkling of a desire to be that? Okay, I may never realize in my human sense that that was possible of me until I experience the desire to be that. So it's like we are led along through this experience of physical 3D reality by our higher dimensional self, who tells us in this very sacred, beautiful way what is possible for us to experience. So it's a very loving way. So our Father loves us, right? So God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, which is the imagination that's in each of us, okay? So that whosoever may believe in him not perish, but have everlasting life, okay? So this is a very loving thing. So the Father in us loves us and wants us to live our best lives. And the roadmap for how we can express our potential is given to us waypoint by waypoint by a loving Father through the language of desire. Maybe you've experienced this. I know I have, where I didn't even know that I wanted something until the desire was born in me. I may have walked past something 1,000 times and never gave it a second thought. And then that 1,001st time I walk past it, all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, there's something here for me. And then that desire comes alive. That is the Father in me alerting me that whatever that desire is a vector that I can travel, a direction, a vector, an orientation that I can travel down towards a greater and more fuller expression of my potential and possibility, right? Have life and have it more abundantly. Okay, that's what the desires are leading us towards. You know, I came so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Okay, so the desires are leading us towards a more abundant life. That's what we all came here to experience. Okay, we all came here to experience a rich and abundant life. Okay, like that's like, you know, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's really the juice. Okay, so if we're like, and remove all the flesh of the fruit and really get down to the juice, that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to know ourselves in the royal sense in a greater way by living the characters, you know, that we're pretending to be in this lifetime. Okay. And so by very nature, that leads to a more rich and abundant life of the one, of the whole. And so individually, we are led towards an outpicturing of a richer, fuller, more abundant life through the medium, through the language of desire. So when we start to look at desire as a communication from our higher, greater, or multidimensional self, that there's a possibility for us to express our potential by moving in this direction. When we start to recognize it like that, now our relationship with desire changes. And instead of, you know, seeing it as something that we're not one with, that we want and we feel separated from, like, instead of seeing that, we're like, oh, that's actually part of who I have the opportunity to be. So let me go ahead and just very naturally accept that and say, oh, this must be part of who I am, because otherwise I wouldn't want it. And this is why Neville says, do not deceive yourself. That's the next thing he says. He says, your dimensionally larger self speaks to you through the language of desire. Do not deceive yourself. Okay, so don't pretend that you don't want what you want, because then you're denying the Father in you, who is just simply trying to express your potential. You know, you are the Father playing a character in the form of the Son. Okay, so you are the author expressing the story through the character. Okay, so you give the character desires as a method of foreshadowing what's going to happen next for the character when the character naturally starts to move in the direction of the desires. Okay, so you hear about these people who, you know, I'm just going to give a wild random example. You know, they're living somewhere in the Northwest, and they've never thought about the state of Georgia. It's never like never been a thing for them. They've never thought about the state in the United States that is the state of Georgia. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they are just smacked with this compelling desire to live in Georgia. And they're like, I don't know where this came from. This seems bizarre, whatever. They're like thinking about it, like, I don't know where this came from. But if they stop thinking and they just accept, well, if I have a desire, it must be pulling me in the direction of my greatest expression of potential. And so if they naturally just accept, and then next thing you know, they're on a plane and they're flying to Georgia to check it out, to see what's going on. And then the bridge of incidents, the most beautiful, amazing synchronicities imaginable start to unfold for them, because now they're just accepting their desires. They're not rejecting it and saying, oh, Georgia, I don't want to live in Georgia, or whatever it is, right? They're just like, no, I'm feeling this tug. I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to flow with it, see what happens. And then now they're entering the bridge of incidents. And then, you know, your dimensionally larger self, which is outside of time and sees all things, past, present, and future, as a singular present whole. It's important to acknowledge that. Okay, we in our limited 3D sense just see the present, the past is a memory, the future is over the event horizon. But our multidimensional self doesn't see things that way. Our multidimensional self sees the whole reality field of everything we can experience as one singular whole. Okay, so naturally it knows the best possible way. And so it's now communicating through these little hints, okay? As we're walking on the stage of life, it's communicating through these little foreshadowing and hints through the medium and language of desire. Hey, go this direction. And suddenly you feel pulled in this direction through desire. So you accept it and you run with it. And you say, okay, I'll give that to myself. I'll become one with that. I'm going to change my address from the Northwest to living in the state of Georgia. I'm going to move into that, right? And then pulled in another direction, pulled in another direction. Next thing you know, your sacred dreams are coming true, because you have now, rather than pushing against desire or deceiving yourself and pretending you don't have a desire for what you do have a desire for, now you're in alignment and you're going in the right direction. Okay, so he's really poking a hole in this idea of, I have been taught not to ask for earthly things. Look, we're living in the 3D for a reason. Okay, we're not, you know, we're not working our way from the bottom up. Okay, we are already at the very highest level imaginable. And now, for the purpose of expanding ourself by exploring our potential, we have now descended from the highest level possible, temporarily in time, right, in the 3D, to take human form and now live experiences in the 3D. So we chose the 3D for a reason. It's not a punishment. It's not a mistake. It's chosen. Each and every single one of us have chosen to enter this dimension of reality and have a human experience on purpose. Okay, so we are here, and in the 3D, there are things like money and stuff. Okay, so rather than adopting this perspective of like, oh, these earthly things are too menial for me, no, we came here to experience these things. They're not menial, they're the point. Sort of. You could make the case that they are the point, because otherwise, if they weren't the point, in whatever area we would want to express our potential could be achieved in a dimension that is not this dimension, on a plane that is not the earth plane. Okay, so because we chose this dimension and this earth plane, it's for a reason. And so these things that are a part of this dimension, such as money and stuff and relationships, okay, they exist for a reason, and they're part of the medium through which we will express our potential. Okay, so do not deceive yourself. Okay, it is not low to have a desire for earthly things, and it is not high to have a desire only for spiritual things. Okay, it's like we got to get things in the right places. Okay, all of this, all desires, all true desires. Okay, so Now we also have to say at least a little bit about what a true desire is. Okay, so true desires are of the Father. True desires are the ones that lead us in the direction of the expression of our potential. A true desire feels like an expansion and not a contraction. Okay? I said that so fast, but that's actually probably one of the most important sentences that I could say here. So I'm going to say it again. A true desire, when contemplated, feels like a sense of expansion and not like a sense of contraction. Okay? Now that's a subtle, energetic difference. But if you're contemplating what feels like a desire and it feels like a contraction, or it feels like a sense of limiting or diminishing possibilities, that's not a true desire. That's a false desire, meaning that it's either not yours, someone else installed it on you. Example that's coming to mind now is the child whose parents very strongly, impress upon the child their desire for the child to be a doctor or a lawyer, because the parents have, their own perspective of what is successful in this world of Caesar. And so doctor, lawyer. So they really impress. So now the child has been taught to believe that it's their desire to be a doctor or a lawyer. But every time they contemplate the state of doctor or lawyer, it feels like their possibilities are diminishing. It feels like a sag. It feels like a contraction. But when they think about something else that they could be, that energy begins to lift and it feels like a whole new world of possibilities is opening up. Okay? So the false desire in this case that feels like a contraction and a limitation and a diminishing of possibility would be the one that isn't even theirs. It's their parents projecting onto them. And then the true desire of the Father that's pointing them in the direction of their potential feels like an expansion and a birth into a new world of possibility. Okay, so true desires will always feel that way. They will always feel like a connection to a greater potential and possibility. Okay, so I could talk for a lot longer about the difference there, but that's the key and the core of the distinction. Okay, we're going to do one more. Do one more question here. Oh, okay. So on question 7, there's one more sentence I did not read. Okay, so let's finish question 7, then we'll do one more question. Neville says, your dimensionally larger self speaks to you through the language of desire. Do not deceive yourself. Knowing what you want, claim you already have it, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give it to you. And remember, what you desire, that's what you have. How do we make sense of this statement? What you desire, that you have. Anybody thinking logically would be like, well, no, I don't. I desire that car and it's not in my garage. I don't have that. Okay. But remember, it's your Father's good pleasure to give it to you. What does that mean? Well, your Father's outside of time. Remember, we talked extensively about thinking fourth dimensionally. Your Father's outside of time. So your Father is looking at the past, present, and the future as one singular present whole. And to your Father, who sees everything at once, that car's in your garage. Okay. So you already have it because you desire it. The desire is the indication that in your fourth dimensional perspective of your life, that car's already in your garage. Okay. So that's how you can do that little Jedi mind trick and be like, I don't see it yet, but because I desire it, it must be part of my path. I don't see it with my eyes. I don't see, the matter reflecting back wavelengths of light on that car in my garage yet. But because I have the desire, the Father in me, who is my true identity, clearly already sees it from outside of time as being part of my path. So yes, I already do have it. in a fourth dimensional sense. And I'm walking through the frame rate of time towards that moment when that car now enters the stage play of my life as a prop. Okay. What you desire, that you have. All right. Question 8. When you have assumed your desire, do you keep in mind this presence of this greater one who is protecting and giving you your assumption? Okay, so I have assumed my desire. Do I keep in mind, like, oh, my father is going to give it to me? My father is like keeping an eye on this. My father is like handling the, like, do I have to keep that in mind? Like, hey, my father's going to take care of this. Meaning, you know, I've assumed it. So like this greater mechanism of my being is going to handle it for me. Do I have to continue to think that way in order to keep it alive? Neville says the acceptance of the end wills the means. Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Your dimensionally greater self determines the means. When you appropriate a state, as though you had it, the activity of the day will divert your mind from all anxious thoughts, and you will not be looking for signs. You do not have to carry a feeling that some presence is going to do it for you. Rather, you know it is already done. Knowing it is already a fact, walk as though it were already here. Walk as though I have arrived. I'm already here. And things will happen on the stage that is your life. All the world is a stage. All the people are merely players and actors and characters on the stage. Things will happen on the stage of your life to make it so in material fact, what you are walking as though it were. You do not have to be concerned about some presence doing it for you. It's already done. The deeper dimensionally greater part of yourself that's outside of time already sees it as a complete fact. Okay, so it's already perfect. It's already done. You're just moving through the frame rate of time to receive it. And that's exactly what Neville says in the next sentence. He says, all you do is move to the place where you will encounter it. Okay? Remember the story of the man who left the master and was on his way home when he met his servant who said, your son lives. And when he asked at what hour it was done, the servant replied, the 7th hour. And that was the same hour that he had assumed his desire. So at the same time you assume your desire, that's when it's done. It was at the 7th hour that the master said, your son lives. Your desire is already granted. Walk as though it were. And although time beats slowly in this dimension of our being, remember that frame rate of time, it beats slowly in this dimension of our being, but nevertheless, it will bring about confirmation of your assumption. I ask you not to be impatient, though. If there is one thing in this journey you really have need of, it is patience. It is patience. And when I contemplate the one thing we really need in this journey being patience, I'm immediately pulled back to the state of I have arrived. When I have arrived, patience is implied in that. I'm not, how could I possibly be impatient when I, in the royal sense of all that I am here and now? patience is a very natural part of that state because I am so invested in the present. There are no anxious thoughts about what comes next. I already know that I am full and whole and one and complete with all of the richest, most beautiful gifts that life has to offer. And I'm not in a rush or in a hurry to get anywhere. I am perfectly patient when I have arrived. Okay, so if you are a member of the YouTube channel at the mastermind level, this is your invitation to join the Zoom room because we're going to do the question and have some discussion here. And then immediately after the conclusion of the live stream, we're going to do a mastermind session. So the link is in the community tab of my channel to join the Zoom room. I invite you to go ahead and pop in. And we will move into the mastermind session immediately after the live stream. Okay. Okay, Orlena, go ahead. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I have a question.
Yes.
That are our desires predetermined by the Father within us? Are they predetermined?
That's a great question. Are they
Right.
predetermined? So Neville would say yes. Neville
Okay.
would say creation is finished. And from a fourth dimensional perspective, well, from a three-dimensional perspective in relation to the fourth dimensional perspective, we are literally moving through time to where we meet the desire that has
Okay.
already been finished
Okay.
in a higher dimension of our being.
Okay. So this 3D body, like we don't have control over what's already in the fourth dimension. Like, okay. Like, okay. So when we have a desire, it's already predetermined by the fourth dimension. Is that what you're saying?
So there's some nuance here, okay? Because
Okay.
and this actually comes up a little bit later in the Q&A session, so we'll get to
Okay.
it next week, but we'll touch on it, okay? So there's a little bit of nuance here because one of the students is about to ask Neville, but wait a second, if our desires are predetermined,
Right.
then like do we no longer have volition to choose?
Exactly.
Right? So if he says he's like from a 3D perspective, the future is already determined. But we have the opportunity to modify and change that predetermined future by selecting a new state from outside of time that becomes a reality field that we now experience inside of time. Okay. So we do still have the ability to change our state and then our desires align with our state. So it's
Okay.
kind
Okay.
of both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of get it now. Okay, so let me see if I can.
Sure.
Okay. So by changing our state, we can change our predetermined desire.
Yes.
Okay, but it's already predetermined.
Right. Because creation is finished. So this is
Okay.
I
Oh
like
my
to
gosh.
go in my mind's eye to a field like a cornfield, right? But what's growing in the cornfield isn't corn. It's a field that is growing realities. Okay,
Right.
these little bubbles of realities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in one of these, when we're identified with one of these plants, okay, we're you know from 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 the perspective of the cornfield, all of those plants are already there. Okay,
Right.
and they're there's DNA, right? So they're all predetermined how they're going to outpicture. But when we're in one of them, we're going to live the experience of being in that reality field.
Exactly.
When we pop out to the field of all possible realities, which are already there and already exist and are already finished, we
Mm.
could choose another one and then move our awareness there. And it's still already done, already finished, but now we're popping into it and then experiencing it
Okay.
frame
Oh
by
my.
frame, right?
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that contribution, Orlena. We're kind of a look ahead to next week, but like we're going to
Okay.
get into that even more next week. But yeah, awesome. Yes,
Perfect.
beautiful. Okay. Anybody else in the Zoom room? any comments on this session today?
Hi, it's Andrea.
Hi,
And
Andrea.
I just want to say, hey, everybody, I'm loving this conversation this morning. Even like
Fantastic.
beginning with Orlana's first question is like, ooh, we're going deep today, and then
Yep.
Roxy is like, wow. It's like
Hmm.
one of my favorite sessions. And I've been listening to you, Josiah, since you were simply reading
Oh,
Neville's
wow.
books. And
Awesome.
then you started doing commentary, and then you started going deeper. And I just, wow, really watched you grow and have grown with you. And I just really appreciate it. And Orlana, your hair is beautiful. Got a
Thank
new
you.
style. Very flattering. Love it. That's all. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And I love you're in the ride or die mode here. You've been with us the whole time. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Okay. Roxy, go ahead.
Um, the when you spoke about the in the meantime, I guess people ask like the what do I do
Mm.
in waiting for? Is it really done? So do I keep saying God is doing it for me? What I've resorted to doing is that this day that I'm living is like saying to myself, so this is what pre my desired reality looks like. So it's like I'm reading the story backwards. So this is just
Mm.
simply the
Hmm.
story before the desired reality. So each day, it's kind of like a joyful mistress. How is this day going to shape up? How is this story taking shape? Because I can be very impatient. So this is how I've tricked myself into patience. Is that
Mm.
is not that it hasn't happened. Is this is
Hmm.
I'm getting to see when I'm going to retell this story to my grandchildren.
Hmm.
This is how the story will go. And then this happened, and then this happened. And one day suddenly the thing is in my reality. So I just play it as that, like a lit story being formed.
A story's being born. I really like that, Roxy. That's an awesome frame. Like you're in the preface or the prologue of the novel, like sort of, but like yeah, living the introduction or the lead up. Yeah, which
Right.
I think that's really cool. And I think I love how you're able to frame that into patience. I think that's like the really important connection to make. Like when you, because now you're owning your moments. You're not anxious about like, oh, this isn't enough, but that will be. You're like, no, this is fine. Like I'm totally here and I'm owning this. And I also know that this is the moments that are leading up, and part of the evolutions of the character arc of the story that I'm living. That it also includes my, these desires. Yes.
That will make for a more epic tale
A more epic
later
tale.
on to,
Yes.
to relive the twists and the turns of it. And also for the fact that however long I have been in my own consciousness trying to create
Yes.
what I did not happen, if I can be patient one day, another day, I have to at least at some point turn the tide on that thing.
Hmm.
So if I keep continuing to be impatient and feeling like I don't have this thing, I'm just lengthening that
Yeah.
cord. So if I just say, okay, either way, let me start today and do something different. And however long it from that point to now, if I was able to endure that, I'm still alive. So as treacherous as I think it was, I survived it to this day. I can survive another day.
Hmm. I really like that frame, Roxy. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I see, Shireen, you were unmuted there. Did you have something to contribute? Okay. Anyone else from the Zoom room? Awesome. Okay. Well, this was quite a session here. Like I said, I really love the richness of these questions and just how it really lets us build the bridge between the theory, which
Hello.
is important to our daily application. Yes, I just heard Shireen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to learn how to operate this Zoom.
Sure.
I just want to give a big appreciation to everyone within the group today. I felt so compelled to be here, and I really appreciated the message that you were able to bring forth today. I did have a quick question about Neville speaks on the states of consciousness. So, of course, when we do have a desire, immediately we are not comfortable in that state of consciousness yet, but as we practice it and become more comfortable with it, we become the realizer of it. So throughout the day, if there is something that is pressing to me at the moment that I've come to realize it is done, but knowing that it's easy to kind of drop back into a lax state of consciousness, even though I have expressed my desire and I know it is done immediately, is it that conscious daily moment by moment practice? Does Neville speak to that? Because in a way, it almost feels like you gotta be watching your thoughts. You gotta be active in this. Like it's not something you can pick up and put down. You gotta remain in it. And so, yeah, I just wanted to know if he ever expressed, this is an ongoing moment by moment development.
Absolutely. Yes. I like how you said that. It's not really something you can pick up and put down and pick up and put down. Yeah, the whole idea is to become normal and natural in that state. And so you could look at it as you're rehearsing it until it becomes normal and natural. And this is what he means when he says you appropriate the state and then you live and walk and act as though it were. So it's this alignment and acceptance of the end, and then you literally operate your daily life from that state, and that can take practice, as you're saying, and it really is a practice of aligning. Like you said, you have to watch your thoughts, yeah, because your thoughts are going to reveal your assumptions. So if you're assuming that something is true and then, you kind of get bumped out of that state and your thoughts kind of start to go south, it's like, well, no, hold on. What are my assumptions right now? Like, am I assuming that I am not the I am that I am? And it's like, well, wait a second, that's not true. Let me go ahead and like realign with being the I am that I am. And then you like pop right back into it and then proceed. And so over time that becomes easier as we become practiced with doing this. We're building not only an alignment in our consciousness, but also the neural pathways in our brain associated with this way of thinking. So yes, you asked if Neville talks about this. Yes, we're expanding a little bit more even in this conversation. But how Neville said it quite matter of factly, he's like, live and walk and act as though it were, which implies continuity. You're continuously in the state, right? It's remember we talked about you're not renting, you didn't get on Airbnb and stay in a mansion for a night. No, you now live there. It's now your default state. So it's like, if you might leave the state momentarily, but you always come back home. So you want to make sure that home that you're returning to is that state of the person that you desire to be.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shireen. We appreciate the contribution. Okay. So that wraps it up for this episode of Sunday Mystery School. Thank you to everybody who joined me live. Thank you to everybody on YouTube and the Mastermind members. We're going to continue next week and move ahead further in these Q&As, and they just keep getting better and better and better. Until next time, everyone on YouTube, imagine wisely, my friends. Really looking forward to seeing you all. On Tuesday, we have special guest coming on to Neville and Chill. Magic Love Story. Starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Special guest, Neville and Chill. It's going to be a fantastic episode we have planned for you. So I really look forward to seeing some or all of you there. Obviously, there'll be a recording too. Very much looking forward to that. And until then, imagine wisely, my friends. And we'll see you all in the next. Okay, back